The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of The Searchers, where we will discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings of this 1956 John Wayne classic. Joining me today on the panel are Thomas Salerno. Hey, Thomas.
Hey there, Dom. Or howdy, Dom, I guess I should say, in my New York accent, which I'm sure sounds great. But
New York City.
String him up.
And also, wow, this is off the rails really quick. And also joining us is Victor Lambs. Hey, Victor.
Well, hello there, Pilgrim.
Sorry, folks. And also, for a real Texan accent, Patrick Mason. Hey, Patrick.
Howdy, Dom.
Father Chip Hines as well joining us. Father Chip.
Hello, Dom. I'm not going to go howdy.
Why don't we have Jimmy with us? That would be an authentic howdy. Yeah,
that would be an authentic howdy.
So, folks, thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows in Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on TuneIn. You can find us in your favorite podcast app or at youtube.com/StarQuest Media, where, of course, you should make sure to subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications and all that YouTube jazz. Be sure to, it really helps us a lot if you write a review of the show, wherever you can write reviews, like at Apple Podcasts or a star rating on Spotify or whatever you can do. We really do appreciate that. And share the show with your friends. We're going to be doing a lot more Westerns because I'm in the mood for Westerns. And there are a lot of great Westerns with a lot of great themes in them. And so we're going to be hitting up a bunch of Westerns in the future on this show. So be sure to subscribe and join us and let other people know about it. So let me give a quick recap of the plot of The Searchers. We're going to spoil this 70-year-old movie. So sorry, folks, if you haven't seen it yet, you should pause, go watch it, and then come back. But here's what happens in The Searchers. Ethan Edwards returns to Texas after the Civil War and soon sets out on a years-long quest to find his niece, Debbie, who was kidnapped by Comanche raiders, as they say. I always thought it was Comanche, after they massacred her family. Accompanied by his sort of adoptive nephew, Martin Pauly, Ethan's obsessive search turns increasingly vengeful as he intends to kill Debbie rather than let her live among the Comanche, having been adopted by the tribe. When they finally find her, Ethan's hatred is overcome by compassion, and he rescues her instead. However, Ethan remains an outsider, walking away from civilization as the film ends with him framed in a doorway. Very symbolic there. So, just a couple of background notes about this movie. It is considered one of perhaps the greatest Western movie ever made, directed by John Ford, and starring, in addition to John Wayne, Natalie Wood as the grown-up Debbie, and Jeffrey Hunter, the future Captain Pike, as his nephew, Martin Pauly. This was, in 2008, voted by the American Film Institute as the greatest American Western. So it is a frankly fantastic movie. But let me get your impressions of this movie right off the bat. Starting with you, Thomas, what did you think of The Searchers?
well, this was my first time seeing this movie. I haven't seen as many Westerns as I would like, so this podcast is giving me an excuse to do that. I did enjoy the movie a lot. I thought it was incredibly well shot, incredibly well acted, lots of drama, lots of twists and turns. John Wayne's character himself took some getting used to for me, but other than that, I really think it was a really epic scale Western. I wasn't expecting like the years-long scale of the titular search. So yeah, I enjoyed this movie a lot, and I'll definitely watch it again.
Awesome. Victor?
Yeah, I grew up watching Roy Rogers and Gene Autry and John Wayne Westerns from the 30s and 40s with my dad. And I saw this movie in college, and it is, for 1956, pretty mature. There's a lot of really complex themes in here that they don't explicitly state, but it's clear what's going on to these women who are kidnapped and stuff. But it is a phenomenal film. I saw it once about 30 years ago, and then again watching it for this podcast. It looks amazing. The cinematography, the vistas here are outstanding. If you watch it for nothing other than that, you won't be disappointed. And it's just a terrific John Ford film. He's known for working with kind of his normal stable, no pun intended, of actors. And he gives the actors and the characters time and room to really just be characters and have lives in this too. So in addition to the main story, there's a lot of little side things going on. There's a lot of really funny moments too, even though the overall story is pretty grim. There's a lot of really funny character moments, and I love it for that. Really good characters, really good filmmaking, really good story. Apparently based on a true story and then later a novel. But yeah, a phenomenal film.
Patrick, what about you?
I really enjoyed this film. It did take a second watching to realize all of the interplay going on between John Wayne's character, the other characters involved, how his assumed past experiences were playing forward in through what he was going through, as well as the other characters. I love the interplay of the storylines. The cinematography was great. The music was great. That really astounded me. I was rather surprised, happily surprised at how well the music was done. And generally, a fantastic movie overall.
Father Chip, how about you? What's your overall impression?
Well, I love this movie a lot. I think it is the best Western, not The Hotel, but the best Western ever made.
Yeah.
And it was filmed in what they call VistaVision, which I imagine had something to do with the great scenery that we saw, and on Eastman color film.
Looks gorgeous. Yeah.
It looks amazing. And I think the thing I forgot about before I rewatched it was the low-key to not-so-low-key racism that was in John Wayne's character. Understandably, from his point of view, get it, but I that is a little jarring at first, and then as it goes on, his heart kind of changed a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, and I think it was there's something about seeing those scenes. It's set in Texas, but it's clearly filmed in Utah and Arizona, and you can tell by the Monument Valley and everything else. So that was interesting. And the framing of the first shot to the last shot, I thought was kind of
through the doorway. Yeah, the film opens with a shot through a doorway and then ends with a shot through a doorway.
That was so cool. I like that a lot.
That was
And
awesome.
apparently that was improvised too on the day of shooting.
Oh,
really?
Wow.
And it's
That's
become
wild.
one of the most iconic shots. Even George Lucas borrowed that on numerous occasions.
Yeah.
New Hope, yeah.
That's a key, actually. Another aspect is this is a very influential film in regard to later films as they were made. A lot of films, we see it now, and so much of it is just normal, right? But for the time, so much of it was not been done before. We've seen so many movies that imitate so many aspects of this, but for the time, this was a groundbreaking film. It did so many new things. The last time I saw this, I was probably a boy. I watched Westerns with my dad as a kid on Sunday afternoons while he dozed in his easy chair and I sat on the edge of the sofa. But that's one of my great memories is watching Westerns with my dad. He was a huge John Wayne fan. And it's been ages since I'd seen this. So it was almost like watching it for the first time again and not knowing what's going to happen. And we've seen so many movies, including modern Westerns, that kind of follow this same idea of the search, the man on a quest. He's on a quest to find often someone for a purpose. And in this, he's on a quest to find family. And it's a complex quest because at first it's a rescue and then it's something else. And we can dig into it as we go. I think John Wayne in this is great. I think he's underrated as an actor sometimes.
Absolutely.
Totally
There's
agree.
a lot of subtlety to his character. And even from the fact that he comes home from the war, he's a Confederate soldier, which kind of informs a lot of that racism that the character expresses in the movie. Is they don't call it out, they don't make a big deal out of it. It's brought up, it's mentioned, but they don't make a big deal like a movie in 2025 would make a big deal about him being a Confederate.
It's also implied that he's been fighting in the Texas Indian War and is a bit of an outlaw too, because he has way more money than he should. He doesn't answer questions
Newly
about where it
minted
came.
dollars, he said.
Yeah, without a mark on him. But yeah, and so I think from his perspective, he comes by his attitudes towards the Comanche honestly, and the way that this particular band of Comanche acquit themselves in the movie, I think they deserve a lot of his attitudes towards them too. Just a note on John Wayne in this film, he looks very grizzled and he's like this hardened old man. And I looked it up and he was actually like 2 years younger than I am when he made this movie. And I was like, it was very sobering. I know. I was like, gosh, he looks so grizzled and he's like just this old crusty man. And it's like,
I feel grizzled.
Oh no.
Yeah. I don't know how old you are, Victor, so I can't really make a comparison. But
I think
John
he's
Wayne
younger
was
than us, Father Chip.
John Wayne was 48 when he made this movie. So
okay.
Oh, yeah,
well, I think the racism that I was really getting at, besides the Comanche one, was his towards the Jeffrey Hunter,
the nephew, Martin,
the step nephew. I thought that was outrageous, but I think it goes to that hero's journey that you were talking about, Don, the searching. But he goes through that. We got to remember, it's a 2-hour movie, but it spans over 5 years, and so they make this. John Wayne's character makes this move from newly home grizzled veteran of war to 5 years later, he's basically writing his last will and testament, leaving it to the kid that he's been calling names the whole movie. So, and in fact, I used this is so church of me. I used that relationship in my homily this morning at Mass because Sirach was used and it was talking about friendship, a faithful friend. And I thought to myself, well, I have a lot of people here at Mass in the morning who probably saw this movie in the theater. So they'll know the Searchers and they'll know, what I'm talking about. And the other thing I wanted to mention too, you guys all mentioned watching this with your father. I remember watching these John Wayne movies with my grandfather, who was a huge John Wayne fan. And every time I went over to their house in Somerville, Massachusetts, it was a John Wayne movie on. If it was like the weekend, he was a hard worker. He worked during the week. But if it was the weekend, man, there was a John Wayne movie on.
Yep. Am I remembering correctly that John Wayne's grandson is a priest, a Catholic priest?
Oh, I don't know.
I thought I remember.
That sounds awfully familiar.
I know
son's in the movie.
Yeah, in this movie,
Wayne.
yes.
Yeah.
And he's got a grandson who is a body double for the Mandalorian. He's one of the guys in the suit.
Right.
In the Mandalorian. Yeah.
Matthew
John
Munoz is a Catholic priest. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yes. Munoz. He's Hispanic. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So I'm not sure if he converted before he died, but there's a lot of speculation that he did, that John Wayne did. But
John Wayne did convert before he died.
I thought I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
And he apparently loved his character so much in this movie that he named one of his own sons Ethan after this character.
Interesting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the theme, there's a big theme in this is of the revenge versus redemption. The idea that he starts out in revenge, even from the beginning, even as he's trying to rescue his nieces, because at first it's 2 nieces who've survived this Indian attack on his brother's homestead. But really, within the first few days, the older niece is killed in a presumably horrific manner, which, again, thankfully, for this time period, they don't spell it out like they would today. It's all off screen and implied, and we all don't need to know the details. But he quickly goes from rescue operation to revenge operation. It really is about, he's mad at the natives, these Comanche. They need to be put down. And it really becomes the focus of what he's at. And the concern for Debbie is really Martin. Martin refuses to be left behind. Ethan is constantly trying to leave him behind and leave without him. Martin refuses to be left behind because I think he senses, if I don't go, who knows what could happen? I don't think Ethan is in this to save Debbie. I think Ethan is in this because he just wants to kill some Injuns.
Ethan is in it to save Debbie. Unfortunately for Debbie, that means killing her, because later on in the movie, we do meet some white women who have been rescued from the Comanche and have been basically treated as you would expect. And they are completely shattered, broken, in shock. One of them is just like catatonic. 2 of them have clearly gone psychotic from the experience. And really what sort of future does Debbie have in Ethan's mind? It would be a mercy killing at that point. And so he is doing it to save Debbie. It's just not to save her life. It's just to save her from the torment of this experience.
Right. That's one of the things I really love about this movie is how little it says and how very important small conversations are. It feels like Ethan mentions it like one time. Like, I can't not go with him. Or not Ethan, sorry. Martin. Yeah. He mentions it one time. I have to go with him because I don't know what he'll be like if he's off the chain, basically, is how he puts it. I love the fact that it just mentions, Ethan was a Confederate and the war had been over for 3 years. Well, where have you been? Right. And I love, the
implication.
Right. This is Northwest Texas following the Civil War. And these other two families have already left. And there's another family that talks about how hard the life is. And maybe one day it'll be a nice place. But like it's effectively a war zone between the Comanche, the Apache, the Texas settlers, and then eventually the U.S. Army. And so Ethan's probably been privateering the whole time and probably has a grudge against at least one, if not more, groups of Comanche.
He has no love for the U.S. cavalry either.
Right.
When we finally do meet them.
There's that too.
There's obviously himself a Confederate cavalryman. Like his pants have the cavalry stripe.
Yeah, the saber.
Them, so, the saber. So I was like, okay, I know what you've been. I know what you've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do love all the different factions because we have the Texas Rangers led by the Reverend Captain Samuel Johnson Clayton, who played by Ward Bond, who is a regular in John Ford films. Yeah, probably like one of my favorite characters in the film because he's a reverend 1 minute, a captain of the Texas Rangers, the next minute Ethan's friend, and the third minute, but is just this really bombastic personality, but can quickly size up the situation and turn on a dime when he needs to. And then we later meet the U.S. Cavalry, who are portrayed as complete idiots. When we finally meet the father and son, corporal and lieutenant duo there, who I think are actually played by father and son actors, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have the settlers, the Jorgensen family. Jorgensen,
yes. Yeah.
And he's got the accent.
Yeah. And Mrs. Jorgensen, and right as they're starting off, says, revenge will eat you up. It will leave you, it will destroy you. And she loses her son in a pointless act of revenge very early in the movie.
Right.
And then the question is, what effect will this have on Ethan and Martin? Will they be so consumed by their revenge that will they end up dead or hollowed out by it?
Yeah, Lucy was the older of the two Edward's daughters, and her beau was the Jorgensen's son, Brad. Thank you. And so when she was taken, he demanded to be let in on the posse, and when they found her dead, he just lost it and basically committed suicide. He rode into the camp, the Comanche camp, alone,
off screen.
Off screen. Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
and dies. And you could tell how hard the life on that frontier is because Mrs. Jorgensen she's devastated by it, and then turns it off, and now because life goes on. It's just like, wow, like what is life like on that frontier where you just have to be hard, otherwise it'll eat you up.
They give Martin Brad's old clothes and think nothing of it.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned how Martin sacrifices a lot. It's funny how a lot of the younger men are not the brightest bulbs on the tree in this. They're all dumb at times. Martin, Charlie, Brad, they're all dim, especially compared to Ethan. But Martin, he sacrifices this relationship, almost completely sacrifices this relationship with the Jorgensen's daughter, this beautiful girl.
Miles.
Yeah, Vera Miles can't beat Vera Miles. Yeah.
Why would you leave Vera Miles to go with John Wayne?
No kidding. Then he ends up getting accidentally married to Look.
To Look, the Indian woman,
she accidentally buys a wife. That was a very funny moment.
That's a funny about 5 or 10 minutes of the movie when he's trying to get rid of
tragically.
her. Yeah. It does.
Yeah, it does. It ends tragically.
I feel like that same scenario has played out then in other movies and TV shows. The accidentally buying a native wife scenario who then like starts following the character around. Again, like you said, Dom, I feel like other movies and stuff have been constantly borrowing from this movie ever since.
Yes, that is definitely true.
That happened in Stargate. Am I wrong on that?
Must have.
Yes. Jack ended up with how many wives in Stargate?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, there was a few. And Daniel Jackson, too.
And I like the framing device here, too, because as they're gone for 5 years, Martin sends exactly one letter to Laurie back home.
Yeah.
Basically, and that's a narrative framework for the middle part of the movie. It's like, we went here, we did this, we were just a little late, that sort of thing. And while Laurie's reading this letter, another beau has showed up at her house.
Right.
Charlie McCory, played by Ken Curtis, who is a brilliant musician and singer, but always gets playing like the dumb rube type roles.
Festus in Gunsmoke.
Yeah, Festus. And so he's come a courting, although he doesn't really realize it yet. And of course, Martin signs his letter like sincerely yours or whatever, which doesn't help his case any. So the second half of the movie is them detailing their exploits. And then he comes back home. Unfortunately, he comes back home on the night of her wedding to Charlie. And we get I think that's probably my favorite sequence in the movie, just because it's so quintessentially John Ford. We have these characters, they've all kind of been doing their thing. They all come together and they just stop the movie to have like this big, goofy fist fight.
It is goofy.
It is.
Yeah, and it's intentionally goofy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, here, pick this up. This is yours. Oh, let's move your fiddle out of the way so it doesn't get broken. And like,
no biting, no kicking.
In the actual fight itself, I almost felt all it was missing was like the Star Trek, like dun 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 dun.
Yeah,
that's true.
Oh yeah, and then they cut to Laurie, and she's like got this huge smile on her face because the boys are fighting over her. She's just very stereotypical classic. And Ma is like, go inside, you Mrs. Jorgensen. This is no place for a lady. And so she runs around and hangs out the window to see.
I love as she's getting pushed inside. She's like, oh, come on, Ethan. He's like, remember, you're a lady.
That was great. I'm trying to think of some other elements of this. I don't want to go through step by step.
The Mose character, I think we should talk about too. Yeah. Mose is like a scout or a tracker, right?
Yeah, he's a member of the community, the local community of ranchers there. He's not all there. He's one of these guys, like, in a community like that, he's not like the village idiot per se, because he's smarter than he might seem at first, but he's simple. I think that's really more the case. He's very focused on, I just want to sit in a rocking chair by the fire. Can I just sit in a rocking chair by the fire? And I noticed this, he's always grateful and pleasant, no matter how mean people are to him at any point. He always says thank you, even when someone's like kicked him in the behind or whatever.
Thank you kindly. Yeah.
He's key to several aspects of Ethan's quest. At different points, he comes in and helps them at key moments to find these Comanche and Debbie. Who is he played by?
Hank Warden, who is another one of John Ford's regulars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting that his name is Mose, and then if you think about The Office, there was the character Mose, who was Dwight's idiot cousin. I just wonder if they were. It makes me wonder if they were thinking about that when they named the character. But
Mose would have been short for Moses, I'm guessing, like old Moses and stuff. So it's not really clear what his background is. If he was. Would he have been someone who would have been freed after the war? I don't know. It's not really clear what he's supposed to be playing there. But yeah, definitely talks in circles, almost riddles. But is it sure you could take him out of the movie? But that's not what John Ford does. He puts these characters in and gives them room to have their own lives within this, and then brings them together when he needs to.
I really, even like the small things, like the fort, the cavalry fort that they go to, or the Mexican village at the end where they meet up with the Mexicans who eventually take them to Scar's camp, the cantina that they're in, and Martin, clueless, the woman with the castanets trying to like dance with him, and he's like, food, and he just like all he cares about is that plate of beans.
Mas frijoles.
Mas frijoles. And it was just kind of a very funny moment. Like the main action is not in front of us. Like it's off to the side, like the important plot, the A plot, and the B plot he puts in the foreground of the scene. And it's an interesting way of filling out the story and making it feel, I don't know, make it feel bigger or something. But
I noticed that in a very early scene, like when Reverend Captain and all the others come into the Edwards homestead, there's stuff going on in the background, and then there's all these people talking over each other in the foreground. Yep. But at the same time, you're being given information. And I'm like, this is really interesting, like, way of framing the scene.
And I absolutely love how that scene ends, because it's the Reverend with his cup of coffee watching Ethan's brother's wife and how she's taking care of Ethan's clothing and getting him ready to go off.
Yeah.
Even before, I think they've made the call to leave Ethan's brother there. And he watches the look and the exchange between Ethan and his brother's wife. And it's this very, like, interesting, subtle, maybe there's something else going on here that never plays out, because later on, unfortunately, everybody's dead, except for Ethan. But you get this feeling that there was maybe something more there that potentially involved Ethan joining the army and going off. And when he came back, that there was something else to it, because you see the way she greets him when he comes in. And so there's a lot of interplay there and a lot of question marks then you get about, like, why is he so interested in tracking the girls down? And is this really for his brother, or is it for his brother's wife? Is it the whole family?
Interesting.
Why is this so very important to him? Yeah.
There are layers that they don't explore. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's just left up to us to take it or leave it. It's fine. See it or not see it.
It respects the audience that way, because it lets you think about that yourself and fill in the gaps without them just spelling it out to you.
Right.
Yeah. Even the character of Martin, he refers to the Edwards girls and the Edwards brother, now deceased, as his brothers and sisters, even though he has no relation to them whatsoever. He's a 8th Cherokee kid that I guess Ethan found in the bulrushes or something, who had been abandoned.
Right.
Yeah, he'd been orphaned and adopted and brought into this family. And then I think ultimately adopted by Ethan too, as a surrogate son in a way.
Yeah. He gets there, but initially he gets very angry at him. He's like, they're not your kin. Like, don't associate yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you see the slowly over time, he warms to him up to the point where he's willing to say, yeah, you're my kin so much that I'm willing, now that I think I'm dying, I'm going to will you what I have.
He tells him, don't call me uncle, and don't call me sir. And he's, what do I call you? Ethan. Just call me Ethan.
Yeah.
I think a more modern movie would have explored that relationship with the sister-in-law to a deeper degree, and might have been even played out more unsubtly than it was in this movie. Because I thought the same thing. I thought there's just the way when he gets to the house and they greet each other and he kisses her on the forehead, and then when she was getting his coat ready, it just seemed like it was almost as if she was getting the coat ready for her husband, when clearly she wasn't. She was getting it ready for Ethan. But I think a modern movie would have been spelled out
that up
for you all the way.
You could almost write a dissertation on that coat itself, the handing off of the coat, and then what he ultimately does with it when he buries his niece in it. And basically that's him taking off his last vestiges of the Confederacy, and he becomes something else at that point.
Right.
Mm.
The landscape, we mentioned this several times, I think, but the landscape itself is almost a character in this movie. Just one of the things I was thinking, like the West Texas, really Monument Valley scrubland that they're in. I'm like, you're raising cattle and farming in this desert. Like, how could you possibly scratch out a living? It shows how determined these people are in settling this land. There's a moment where Mrs. Jorgensen is talking to, I forget who she's talking to, but she's talking about, like, it so happens we be Texicans. This is what she says. A Texican's nothing but a human man out on a limb. This year and next and maybe for 100 more. But I don't think it'll be forever. Someday this country will be a fine, good place to be. Maybe it needs our bones in the ground before that time can come. I'm like, wow, like, what a viewpoint. This idea of we're building a land that will be amazing, a fine place to be in the 1950s, having survived World War II and America at thriving by that point, and saying this was built by people whose bones were in the land. They weren't going to live to see the fruits of their labors. Wow, I really like that moment.
It's also like manifest destiny, right? This idea that this American idea that we're going to go out and tame the wilderness, the most inhospitable places, and build a civilization out of it. It's that quintessentially American idea of the frontier and all that stuff. And that's why it's almost like Westerns, in a way, are American mythology, because it's that just that frontier thing. It's like so baked in, like even when there's no frontier left, it's so baked into the American identity. At the time this movie's being made, people are thinking, oh, we should go to outer space now. It's the only frontier left.
Right. I mean, 1956, Sputnik was a year away. You know, I mean, the space program was just getting ready to launch. This was the spirit, was the onward, upward, outward, to fill the land, tame it. Like you said, manifest destiny, that God had given us this destiny to take this land. And when you put that up against also the fact that there were people in it who were in this land, and that conflict is at the heart of this movie, this conflict with the people who are already there. And I don't think there's any judgment being made on natives, whether they're savages or whatever. I think if there's a judgment, it's being made on this particular band of natives,
led by Chief Scar.
Chief Scar,
played by a very non-Native American actor in makeup.
Yeah, you noticed that too, huh?
Yeah, who has basically taken white women as his wives. He carries around a pole with scalps on it. So there's a symmetry in the way he dies, with Ethan scalping him after he's killed him. So we're not so different. You and I isn't actually said in the movie, but I think some of that is implied. Frontier justice.
Yeah, it's very much the cycle of retribution, right? You have Scar. You have the scene. Okay, Scar's killed this family off, and he takes the two girls, and one of them dies horrifically, and the other is "quote unquote" made into a Comanche, right? But then you find out from Scar, like, he was raiding because his sons were killed by white people, or by the whites. Right. And so the question mark is like, well, how far back does it, like, what's the cycle of retribution? And it doesn't necessarily end, like, because what we have in the movie at the end is the death of a lot of the Comanches. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's it. Like, that cycle continues forward. And that's the interesting part, I think, about the character of the Reverend, because he's both a Texas Ranger commander, whatever, or captain, and the Reverend at the same time. It's this very strange combination between those two almost opposed things, because when you're a settler in this area, the cycle of retribution is a common thing because there really is no law, right? And he represents the law, but at the same time, he's supposed to represent Christ to these people. And you have a very opposed thing going on where you have to uphold the law, which a lot of time does lead to retributive justice, and the command to turn the other cheek. And how does that play out?
Right.
Well, that's true. Yeah. I was just going to say, at one point, even Ethan says, are you talking to me as a captain of the Rangers, or as a reverend, or as my friend? And I think that kind of duopoly that he has there, of being a reverend and a captain lawman type, is a problem that in a modern movie probably would have been played out a little bit differently too. But I think that's one of the things I like about this movie, is that they can play some of it for humor, and some of it is serious. And and even John Wayne has that serious, like, monologue or dialogue with Martin about Lucy, and you don't see it; it's all off screen. But he says, "What do I have to spell it out for you?" And he has that, like, long, not long, but that dialogue with Martin about what happened, without telling him exactly what happened. And so there's lots of stuff going on in this movie like that.
Right.
It goes to the greatness of it.
You spoke about the duology, or the dual nature of the Reverend Captain, and Ethan's attitude about it early on. You know, after the family is killed, they have the funeral, and Ethan's like, "The dead bury the dead," this sort of thing. Like they're dead. Let's put them in the ground, say a few words, and go.
Yeah,
there's no more time for praying. Put an amen on it, he says.
Put an amen on it.
he was ready for retribution. He wanted revenge. Like, he wanted to go. He didn't have time for that prayer stuff, and how that changes. And he goes through the refiner's fire a bit. He goes through, or the time in the desert, literally, as he's changed throughout this movie. And I think it's that confrontation with his mortality at the end, the confrontation where he's confronted by the girl right there in front of him in the flesh, not some theoretical girl who's been changed by the Comanche, but this real living and breathing girl, and his own mortality. He's been shot. He's injured. He thinks he might die. And I think that changes him in those moments. He reconciles with Martin. He decides to save the girl instead of kill her to save her. Because
the first time they meet her, Debbie, he's ready to shoot her. He has a gun drawn on her. And it's only because Martin covers her, and then they're later interrupted by the Comanche coming to get him, that stops him at that point. So he's ready to kill her at that point, but later on doesn't.
I'm just looking at some of my notes. There's another great line, by the way, from Mose when they're at the river and they're confronting across the river. And as the Comanche are about to charge across the river at them, Mose says, "For what we are about to receive, we thank thee, Lord." Which is usually grace before meals, but
and
I know that's been used in a movie before in this same situation, or since in this same situation.
And that is an amazing action sequence. So the 4 or 5 of them have set out to track him, and very quickly they're ambushed by 30 or 50 Comanche on horseback armed with rifles. And they try to play it cool at first, then they break, they ford the river. They're hiding behind some pieces of driftwood, basically, while Comanche are attacking them. And it's a really effective shootout sequence. And I think it stands up to even some of the shootout sequences in movies today, because one of them, Mr. Jorgensen, is shot.
Nesby.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Jorgensen doesn't go with them, but
the other guy. Yeah, and it's really effective. Like, are they going to be able to survive this? What's the outcome going to be? And eventually they turn them away. And of course, the Comanche are retreating, and Ethan runs into the river, basically still firing him as the Comanche are trying to retrieve their wounded, which the Reverend does not approve of.
Right. And that's the point where most of the posse has to turn around and head back because Nesby's been injured. They've got to get him back to have whatever doctor or whatever to try to save him. And Ethan's ready to go on alone, and it wants to go on alone. But Ethan and Brad insist on coming with, and so
Martin.
He lets them come. Sorry.
Yeah.
Brad. Why do I keep calling Martin Ethan? I just can't keep them straight.
Yeah.
So, So, go ahead.
I like how often crucial Mose is in a lot of these scenes, especially I feel like there's 2 scenes where his entrance into the scene results in a resolution to whatever is happening and them going off to fight the Comanche. It's almost like, because I feel like when it's either a trading post or he's dealing with the Mexicans at the cantina, and Mose comes in and he gives them just this little piece of information that he then takes with him and realizes, okay, this is really the guy, and I'm going to go with this Mexican guy to go see if I can take care of this. And then the next time he does it, he lets him know, oh yeah, it's really Comanches and Scar's with them, more or less, in his speech. And that's when they decide to go with the cavalry. Because before that, it was going to turn into this whole marasma of stuff. Like, no, we're not going. Yeah, we're going. And Moses' entrance into the scene just galvanizes. We have our way to go now. And it's all from this simpleton.
Yeah, because he's escaped from Scar's group, basically, and has been found and brought back. And he tells him he was able to escape because he can live so long because he convinced him that he was crazy. He's like, so you have this guy who's not all there. He's like, yeah, they thought I was crazy. I ate dirt, grass. I'm not crazy, though, type thing.
Sure, you're not, Moses.
Yeah. Another thing I really like about this movie, so we get this passage of time over 5 years. So there's a few scenes where they're actually trudging through snow, which I thought was good. It really gives a sense of time. And they made their actors ride down this steep hill on horses in basically chest-high snow.
Yeah.
I have a feeling some animals were harmed during the making of this motion picture.
They shot some bison,
They did shoot at least one bison the way it just dropped, yeah. And again, that wasn't even, they didn't shoot the bison for food. Ethan was scaring off the bison so the Comanche would starve.
But Martin thought that they're doing it for food, but Ethan just got crazed in wanting to kill all of the bison. Yeah. That was an interesting, like he got this look on him. Like he was just manic, crazy about it. And Martin was like freaking out, like, dude, settle down, rein it in.
That bison that got shot was a really good actor.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How do they train the bison to do that? That is amazing.
He went.
It was
down
Daddy, is the bison tired? No, son.
It was an
And I liked what they said, too. They're like, we encountered a small herd. And I'm thinking to myself, the
That's
reason
small.
why there's a small herd in 1950 is because most of the bison have been killed off by this point.
Right.
They're not
Right. That
herds
would've
of
been a-
tens of thousands anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
That's but the original herds were like a million
Massive.
across the plains. Yeah.
Yeah, we're back up into the mid 100,000s now, I think.
Yes.
Or maybe more now. So they're no longer on any watch lists and stuff.
So I have a note here again about a lot of the men not being very bright, including Martin accidentally getting a native wife. I did love the fact that Ethan kept turning the screw by calling her Mrs. Polly. Every time Mrs. Polly, just, oh my gosh, it cracked me up because it was like, oh.
I liked
Martin.
that because
He was really enjoying it.
Yeah, we got to see Ethan's playful side, which I really appreciated. Yeah.
They
That is true,
humanized
yes.
him.
Right, because like so many depictions of a cowboy is this no talking, kind of grim faced, everything's terrible,
Clint
no
Eastwood,
joking around.
spaghetti westerns,
right, Clint
basically,
Eastwood,
yeah.
spaghetti westerns. If you watch the Magnificent Seven, how many jokes are in that? There's few.
Yes,
there's a couple,
few.
but you don't get that version of the cowboy. Is what John Wayne's character is at the beginning, but the further you get with his character, you realize there's a lot more depth to him, and he's not just the stereotypical spaghetti western cowboy. That's yet another thing the movie does like very well.
And characteristic of John Wayne characters in westerns, he's never like the Clint Eastwood man with no name. He's always got this sense of humor. He's a little more well-rounded in that. Sometimes he's stern, sometimes he's like a Rooster Cogburn, but there's always an element of humor in that. There's always a couple different sides, and that's what makes those movies so enjoyable.
Yeah, early on in his career, they tried to make him a singing cowboy like Roy Rogers or Gene Autry. Yeah. And very quickly they dropped that, but I think in the
probably
in the
for
30s,
good reason.
Yeah, I don't think it was actually him singing.
In the end, Ethan returns Debbie and Martin back to their home, and he leaves. He rides off. This idea of the wandering figure who never truly has a home. And it's an open question: is he redeemed? He starts this movie as a very gray figure, literally a gray figure, having the implications of he was on the losing side of the Civil War. He might have been an outlaw. He might have been in a bad adulterous relationship with his brother's wife. There's a lot of these questions, and in this murderous rage and his vengefulness. And by the end of the movie, he's changed a lot. But what do you think? Is he a redeemed figure?
Well, the dude abides. He is who he is, and he's true to his nature.
I think you mean the Duke abides.
The Duke abides. Yeah, it's much better. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not a hero.
Yeah.
What's a hero? Anyway? Sometimes there's a man.
That's right.
Very good.
I don't want to go too long. I want to start to wrap things up. There's a lot of us to wrap up, so I want to give us plenty of time for that. But any final thoughts? Anything we missed that you want to make sure we cover? Thomas, again, we'll start with you. Anything that you want to cover, or even favorite moments in the movie?
Well, I'd just like to mention a few things surrounding the movie. As somebody mentioned earlier, I believe it was you, Victor, that this is based loosely off of true events. There was a real woman, Cynthia Ann Parker, who was captured by the Comanche and was the subject of this rescue attempt. But in real life, Cynthia Parker did not want to return to society, like at all, at any point, and had difficulty acclimatizing back into what was white civilization at that time. So the movie obviously takes a somewhat different tack, but it was interesting for me to actually, when I learned this was loosely based off of historical event to look into some of the
Right.
events surrounding it. And also,
And
like, just
her son, but I'm sorry, her son was Quanah, who was a very famous
right.
war leader for the Comanche.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. It's an amazing story.
And just like, if
Sorry, go
people
ahead.
are interested in this time period and the Indian Wars, there's a great book called The Last Campaign by H.W. Brands, which is a really balanced, really thorough exploration of a lot of the major campaigns leading up to even like almost the turn of the 20th century. These wars were still going on. And it shows that, like, there was a lot of ugliness on both sides of this and a lot of heroism on both sides of it. And if you're like me and you're a history buff and you want to learn more about this time period, that's a great resource.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was a book that someone had recommended not long ago about some of the stuff, including Quanah. I think Empire of the Summer Moon might have been the one I heard about more of this, the milieu of this and these conflicts with the Comanche in this area at this time. Thanks, Tom. So, Victor, do you have any other notes on this one?
Yeah, just a few. So we didn't touch on John Wayne's iconic catchphrase in this movie, which is "That'll be the day."
That'll be the day, yeah.
Apparently, it influenced Buddy Holly, who the next year wrote his famous song "That'll Be the Day That I Die."
Oh.
And when this movie came out, it made back its budget. It doesn't sound like it was a commercial hit at the time. It came out. So 1956, we also got Forbidden Planet, Rebel Without a Cause, and then the 10 Commandments, which grossed, I think, like 10 times what this movie grossed. So it was up against some pretty stiff competition at the time. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the milieu it was in. So it's just to put it into that context.
Interesting. Patrick, any other notes on this one?
We've talked a lot about it, but I think for such a simple premise for a movie and a basic storyline, it has such a wide ripple effect down through movie making history. Just the music, the way things are shot, the way things are framed, action on scene versus off scene. And does anybody have a counter for how many times Ethan punches Martin? Because but that's another thing. This, like I said earlier, it does a good job not even showing us, but we get the impression, like when Ethan doesn't let Martin into the house and he literally punches him out in order to make sure he doesn't see, or when he tells them to stay out of the valley because he's already buried Lucy. And that, you can see that mentally tears him apart just doing that action. And it's such a fantastic movie for so many reasons that would probably not end up making it a box office hit because it's so deep.
Father Chip?
Well, one of the things we didn't touch on was that gunfight between Ethan, Martin, and that store owner.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Mr. Fluffernutter.
Yeah.
Butterman.
For which they were going to have to face some sort of consequence, but didn't end up ever facing any consequence for. And the reason why was because they were all shot in the back, which was interesting because that's the universal sign of people running away, right? You're shooting them in the back.
I think that's still on the books in Texas, if I remember right.
Yeah, it might be. You never know.
If you shoot somebody in the back, it's assumed that you were a murderer. Yeah, that you're murdering them. Like It's an upscale.
Interesting.
And the other thing is that I read last night, this John Ford commissioned one of the very first making of featurettes for this movie.
Really?
So yes, while this movie was being filmed, they were filming a making of as well. And it was if it wasn't the first, it was one of the first times they had ever done that in movie history.
Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that if it exists somewhere. Yeah,
I
love
think it must exist somewhere. I don't know where, but I watched the movie on Amazon, so they didn't really have any of the featurettes or anything. But I bet if you looked it up on YouTube, it's probably there.
Yeah, there is a 10-minute, The Story of the Searchers. It may be longer than that, but it's filmed in black and white. So that's probably from that time.
Probably is, yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple last thoughts. Roger Ebert described this movie and Ethan Edwards as one of the most compelling characters Ford and Wayne ever created. He says, the Ethan Edwards story is stark and lonely, a portrait of obsession, and in it we can see Schrader's inspiration for Travis Bickle of The Taxi Driver, or of Taxi Driver, the movie, or so many other characters, obsessed. He's an Ahab character in a sense, seeking the white whale. And so is a man obsessed. Malcolm Reynolds is a type of Ethan Edwards in this. That's actually a really interesting close comparison, because he too was a former rebel,
former Confederate, basically.
Former Confederate.
And then countless characters in Kurosawa's films, because Kurosawa was influenced to a great deal by John Ford. So not necessarily Yojimbo, but there are a lot that you can make that comparison to.
Right. And then you see that play forward into the Tarantino movies.
Yep.
He does, if you want to find a modern filmmaker who does a lot of the similar things done in this movie with conversations, Tarantino's probably the closest one you're going to get.
Absolutely.
That's true. Right. Yeah, I'm thinking of Scenes in Reservoir Dogs and what was the one with Christian? Well, I was trying to think of the one with Christian Slater, True Romance.
Oh,
another
sure.
one where there's some aspects that are similar. Yeah, Pulp Fiction too. Yeah, but I find like there's a lot of themes in this of forgiveness, of trying to of the redemption, of vengeance, and forgiveness, and overcoming human frailty. And so there's a lot about the human condition in this movie, and yet it's an enjoyable story about cowboys and Indians. So it is a great movie on many levels. And I think just in our 1 hour discussion that we've had, we've shown that. So we're going to be talking about a lot more Westerns, a lot of older ones, but maybe we can also rope in some newer movies that have connections, like, I don't know about Unforgiven.
Unforgiven.
Yeah.
Haven't seen it.
That's a pretty brutal one. Yeah.
Awesome.
3:10 to Yuma. That's pretty brutal too.
But even other movies like Logan and No Country for Old Men have interesting connections to the themes that we find in this movie. There's again, like we said right off the bat, this movie has a lot of connections to stuff that we've seen since then. And so it really is, I think, a great place to start in our future discussions of more Westerns. So I don't know what we're going to do next for a Western. It won't be the next episode of Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. We've got some other stuff, some more Studio Ghibli and some more Godzilla and some more Marvel. And so there's a bunch of stuff coming. I don't know if this is, out after our Silo discussion, Silo season 2, but Severance season 2, we're definitely going to be talking about that because that's weird. It deserves some talking about. But we're going to wrap this discussion up for now. And before we go, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Movies and TV Shows, including Paul E., Laura R., Robert B., Alfredo M., and Elliot J. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Movies and TV Shows and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And remember, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, so your donations are tax deductible to the fullest extent of the law. Consult your tax professional. So that's it from us this time. We'd love to know what you think of The Searchers, or also what cowboy movie should we talk about next? So let us know by commenting on the show, by posting at sqpn.com/secrets, or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to secrets@sqpn.com. Join us on the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord, and we can have a great conversation about the movie. And until next time, Father Chip Hines, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of The Searchers.
Thanks for having me, Dom.
Patrick Mason, thanks for coming.
I tip my hat to you, Dom.
Victor Lambs, go rustle up some cowboys or something.
That'll be the day.
That'll be the day. Nice.
And Tom Salerno, thank you also for joining us.
Thank you kindly, Dom.
Thank you kindly. And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Movies and TV Shows on StarQuest. Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy: The Secrets of Doctor Who. Find the show wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/ Doctor Who. We'd like to thank Patrick McCaffrey of Moonshadow Studios for editing this episode. To have your audio edited professionally and with care, check out more of Patrick's work at moonshadowstudios.biz. That's moonshadowstudios.biz.